You don't see gutter runners or night runners too often these days. At one point in time when Skaven were first released in Warhammer 2, these were kind of the cream of the crop in terms of their skirmishers. These days they're pretty decent against lower armor factions especially, although tend to get overshadowed by much more cost-effective weapons teams. But in this particular build here, no bombers. Instead, we've got gutter runners and night runners mixed. Face off against the Wood Elves. This replay courtesy of Anti-Kaiju and the build, of course. And yeah, it's against Lenorm, two regular submitters, friends of the channel. So let's get started here. As this Warlord takes a little bit of skirmish damage, he's going to be on that Brood Horror, which is going to horror as I try not get demonetized. It is, yeah, regeneration, frenzy. He's got decent enough stats with frenzy active, 60 melee attack. Okay, weapon strength, not the best, but he's definitely there. Not too expensive, which is nice. Rat Ogre's protecting the back line. We do have one weapons team with the Avalanche Mortars and two with the Natty Boobos. Warlock Engineer with, I'd imagine, just Flensing Ruin, yeah, and Howling Warp Gale. Got some Clan Rat Spears, shields, more Night Runners, and some Skaven Slaves to kind of act as fodder on the flanks. For the Wood Elves, it's a big, wide build here with Deepwood Scouts and Hagbane Tips. It's Swift Shiver Shards, or just regular Deepwood Scouts, which is, again, quite good in this matchup. That AoE 360 shooting against lower armor factions, which I would definitely consider both of these to be low armor factions. I mean, Skaven have some options for armor, but they're not great. Generally, you don't need armor piercing against them. Wood Elves are probably the lowest armor faction in the game right now. I don't think... Do they have any units like over 60 armor, 70 armor? Maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think so. But a nice Howling Warp Gale there. Oh, does it manage to actually trap him on the ground? It looks like just barely managed to get the attack animation off in time. Get the Forest Dragon to kind of re-land there. Maybe? Nope. A little bit of buggy pathing behavior. But Forest Dragon's just going to re-land anyway, maybe? Yeah, a little bit of breath attack straight down on the head of the Warlord. Does some decent damage. He's going to now pull back to his own lines. So the gutter runners here, do they have poison? I would imagine probably so. No, actually. No poison on their missile attacks, so it's not going to be debuffing their opponents, but still with that 360 shooting and pretty decent damage. Don't have the most ammunition in the world, but also decent melee stats. I mean, not completely terrible. Against Wood Elves, it's probably not going to be enough. Let's see, Deepwood Scouts actually less melee stats, but we've also got these Dryads lurking in the back here, and War Dancers, some Glade Riders, so as this skirmish fight plays out, Wood Elves can tend to just kind of pick off some low leadership units here with their mobile units. Spellweaver, once again, getting hit by that Howling Warp Gale, but not a lot to punish. There's no, like, high burst, I should say. Natty Boobos are going to focus in, try and take out that Forest Dragon. Definitely the high priority target number one. Spellweaver also... maybe arguably should be a more important target, at least while you have them netted, but you really shouldn't be spreading the damage around, so just pick one or the other and try and focus them as much as possible. It's pretty decent to have the Rat Ogres there and kind of a surround, but again, a little bit of pathing issues leads it to a traffic jam. They don't really follow up and aren't able to keep the Forest Dragon on the ground, unfortunately, so it is able to escape, but Wood Elves are, again, just kind of hanging back with their melee forces right now, content to let their cavalry and skirmish kind of pull some of these Skaven forces away from each other. And again, Skaven Slaves getting caught out in the open. The spear is a little bit slow to react, but should be able to get over there and provide some support. But the Deepwood Scouts are paying some price, certainly, from those Avalanche Mortars. They get hit on the counter skirmish. A little bit of damage on those Blade Riders as well, so it's definitely, so far, let's say these two are trading pretty much evenly. Rat Ogre there getting caught a little bit out in open space after being routed off. It's unfortunate, but let's see. It's going to be a bit of a patient game. Both players bringing sort of mid-ranged, kind of kite almost focused builds to a degree. Another Howling Warp Gale there, and the Forest Dragon taking some pretty serious damage. Gutter Runners also focusing in. Reminder that the Forest Dragon doesn't have a lot of armor, only 60. Relies mostly on its physical resistance, which does apply, actually, coincidentally, to all of these units. I don't know. Should Jezzails actually have magic damage? I think back in the day, they were never given magic damage because of how important they were in the Dwarf matchup. But you guys who know the lore and the tabletop will probably be able to tell me better than I would know. Should I know, like, Warp Lightning Cannons deal magic damage, but should Jezzails also deal magic damage? Might be an interesting change. Not that Jezzails really need much of a buff. They're already one of the Skaven's best units, but nice Flensing Ruin there. Just going to deal direct damage to this AoE of single entities. Will they be able to finish the Forest Dragon off? Let's see here. This is a pretty critical point of the battle. Armor debuffs from that Flensing Ruin. And it looks like the Natty Boobos, I think, are going to lose line of sight momentarily, or else switch to another target. Nope, they're going to stay on target here. Down to 29 HP, and the dragon goes down. Okay, so very important there that the dragon falls. That's going to not give any terror to the Wood Elves, obviously. And finally, these infantry are going to decide to rush on in. Even without the dragon, though, balance of power is probably still slightly in Wood Elves' favor. But yeah, a little bit of a cheeky Howling Warp Gale there. Always a nice spell to have. And the focus from the Gut Runners actually was reasonably effective. Yeah, haven't quite paid for themselves yet altogether. But still, pretty decent performance so far. Although they are getting a little bit blobbed up here. When they're firing up into the air, it won't matter so much. But let's see, another Howling Warp Gale. Yeah, with that Spellweaver. It's War Dancers getting in here, but they are facing a decent amount of pressure. That said, Blade Riders kind of cleaning up the flanks here. Once again, the Gutter Runners, Natty Bubo's Sharpshooter's going to focus in. Spellweaver's got Earthblood to try and heal herself back up. And the Deepwood Scouts also, again, punishing these Rat Ogres that overextend very heavily. That Focus Fire with the Dryads, certainly enough to get them routed, no problem. Dryad's decent weapon strength also trades very well into the Rat Ogre's low armor. Zoom on over to this other engagement here where we see something similar playing out. The Dryads doing a great job with the support units away. The Rat Ogres are just having a real bad time here. But the Skaven still have plenty of missile tools to try and kite, perhaps. There's a decent amount of ammunition left, but the Natty Boobos, they are not fast enough to kite here. The Wood Elves infantry is fast enough to catch them, I should say. Oh man, it's kind of janky, just these little stunted trees charging over the hill in the desert with the pyramids in the background. I don't know, something about the Wood Elves fighting in Nehekara just seems a bit odd to me, although I know they have a base relatively nearby. Those Blade Riders Hagbane tips too, haven't really been highlighting them too much, but the tactical kind of placement of their poison debuff various units. They've also paid for themselves in terms of raw value pretty much, so really nice to see the Wood Elves on the full press here. Again, maybe should have gone with the infantry rush in a little bit sooner. Maybe they tried a little bit too hard to play off of the skirmish, but still plenty of tools left, and Warlock Engineer here now mostly out of magic. Again, kind of gets exposed. It's a relatively slow character, so he can't necessarily keep up with the kite. And he is going to perhaps get routed. Not the most leadership there, as he is left all alone. Maybe some Clan Rat Spears can help bail him out, but Blade Riders will use their decent melee stats. Try and finish them off. And the speed of the War Dancers and the Dryads is going to come in absolutely critical here, as they're able to run down and massacre these various rats. You can see the Gutter Runners firing a little bit. They have a nice hill position here, actually, that gives them decent line of sight to be able to fire onto many different targets. That Warlord comes charging on in, gonna rally the leadership of these units so they can fight. Night Runners and Gutter Runners also do rely on their physical resistance pretty heavily, so they're gonna have a pretty bad time against the Dryads overall. That, again, high weapon strength and magical damage, just cutting them to bits. Low HP, physical resistance, Night Runners, not ideal for them, but they definitely have the numbers on their side, and with the Rat Ogres in support and with Warlords' help as well, they're able to rout away Dryads no problem. Move on to this next unit of War Dancers here, perhaps. Yeah, Deepwood Scouts now also getting hit. Long range, Natty Boobos looks like came back, yep. They're just going to take out whatever targets they can at this point. But the Spellweaver herself is actually going to be a pretty decent force to be reckoned with here. As long as she's able to fight with support against the Warlord, she'll have no problem cycle charging him. 62 charge bonus, decent weapon strength. It's enough to get through. I mean, the Skaven Warlord here also doesn't have a lot of armor, only 60 armor, so he will be pretty vulnerable to her attacks from the air. Again, if she's able to have support enough to where she can cycle charge. In a straight-up fight, I would definitely give it to the Warlord. But flying does give her a pretty significant edge here, especially with the Warlock Engineer no longer being able to provide Howling Warp Gale. Let's see, Night Runners moving into combat against Deepwood Scouts. Let's watch these Ninja Rats in melee against their not quite peer opponents. I would say Night Runners are a bit of a tier below Deepwood Scouts. Gutter Runners are more on their level, but still similar units. Rat Ogre's charging on in here, or maybe trying to charge through, not really sure. With more Night Runners moving in, Elves are going to face a numbers problem there where they just get significantly overmatched. Same thing here, Deepwood Scouts, the Gutter Runners, more of a peer opponent, especially given they have such a superior model count. Means that just on a kind of micro basis, they'll match much better, like 2v1, 3v1 potentially, against these Deepwood Scouts. Yeah, Deepwood Scouts here, 80 units base versus 120 Gutter Runners, so more models isn't always better, but a lot of the times in a fight like that where, I mean, in terms of other stats here, they're pretty similar. Deepwood Scouts even worse, arguably. Much better skirmish potential, obviously, but yeah, so they're just going to trade on a per model basis badly, and they have less models, so it's really not, math's not great for them, but the overall math right now is not great for the Skaven. A lot of their units have just kind of hit a critical leadership point. There's still so many healthy Dryads here. This one unit in particular is quite good, and actually that is the healthy unit of Dryads. There's some others here. Just in general, a lot of kind of tattered units remaining for the Wood Elves here. Almost called them High Elves, but they're feeling pretty high and mighty right now, that's for sure. Deepwood Scouts, ammunition, a little bit of ammunition on that unit there. Spellweaver also, again, decent force to be reckoned with, and it's looking pretty good from a support standpoint. This one unit of Dryads, it's like the perfect match for this remaining Gutter Runner here to beat them down, so they don't have to fight Deepwood Scouts. And then if they can get this guy away, or even better, just beat the Gutter Runners, which seems pretty likely at this point. Yeah, Gutter Runners just suffering badly. Warlord's Rude Horror is almost at its healing cap, so Spellweaver should have plenty of opportunity to do some serious lasting damage here. Let's see. Not looking great. We'll fast forward a little bit through this as Spellweaver's going to get in position, kind of heal herself up a little bit, try and recover some of that vigor. Move in for the final kill. So this is, as foretold, going to be a big problem. And I think the Warlord agrees, so he's just going to rout. And there you go. Very fun game, very close game at the end of the day. Yeah, Lenore maybe, again, probably should have brought in, maybe he just forgot, or maybe it was a tactical decision consciously to just try and get as much value from the skirmish phase as possible. It's definitely possible that is the case, but maybe he'll let us know down in the comments below. Regardless, though, it ends up working out okay in the late game rush, kind of cleaning up the tattered remnants. These infantry units are able to get in here and not necessarily pay for themselves, get pretty close in a lot of cases. The one Dryad in particular that lasted into the very end does a really nice job, but ultimately the skirmish, like, just letting the skirmish kind of play out largely does pay for itself. The Dragon's the one piece that kind of had a bit of a tough time, but the other units were largely able to make up for it. See some nice chasing routing units and value on these Glade Riders here. Deepwood Scouts, all cost effective. On the Skaven side, I mean, the high-end weapons teams, Natty Boobo's sharpshooters were definitely a plus, and Avalanche Mortars provided some nice pressure tactically. We weren't quite able to pay for themselves, but quite happy with the performance of the Night Runners and the Gutter Runners here. I do think there's a few specific matchups, like primary low armor matchups, where these guys could possibly be effective. Beastman's tricky because Beastman infantry are too fast, probably. Even this one, like, a lot of Wood Elf infantry are fast enough that it might be tough, but even still, ends up working out here okay because they kind of both went for a skirmish, so they had some nice opportunity to try and counter skirmish here. The Rat Ogres are maybe the one piece for Anti-Kaiju where he possibly lost it, just letting him get overextended and kind of taken apart piecemeal. If he had been able to keep them back a little bit more conservatively, would have maybe had enough support in the endgame to power through some of those remaining tattered units, but it's hard to say in a close game like that. You know, a number of factors could have changed the outcome of the battle, but still, That's one kind of key highlight, I would say, just from a high-level perspective. But yeah, overall, really nice performance by both players, must be said. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching that. If you did, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.